Welcome back to ABC General Hospital Spoilers channel. Today we will learn about the issue of explosive revelations and dangerous confrontations set to unfold on Tuesday, December 30th. As Port Charles finds itself engulfed in a web of secrets, warnings, and shocking discoveries that will leave multiple residents reeling from the fallout. The upcoming episode promises to deliver high-stakes drama as Jen Sidwell issues a chilling ultimatum to Drew Kane, while Willow Kane stumbles upon information that could change everything she thought she knew. Meanwhile, Sonny continues his calculated game of manipulation, attempting to blur the lines between right and wrong in ways that could have serious consequences for everyone involved. Jordan's critical discovery. The episode kicks off with a pivotal moment as Jordan Ashford makes a significant breakthrough in her investigation. Standing before Laura Collins with an expression that mixes professional satisfaction and cautious optimism, Jordan reveals that she's uncovered something substantial. Her exact words carry weight as she confesses to finding evidence that could give Laura exactly what she's been searching for. This discovery isn't just any random piece of information, it's specifically tied to Jen Sidwell, the dangerous criminal who's been pulling strings behind the scenes in Port Charles. Jordan's intel could prove to be the game-changing advantage Laura needs to finally gain the upper hand against Sidwell's operation. The question now becomes how Laura will utilize this information and whether it will be enough to expose Sidwell's criminal enterprise before he can cover his tracks. Jordan's years of experience in law enforcement have clearly paid off, as she's managed to dig up dirt that others have missed. The timing of this revelation couldn't be more critical, given that Sidwell's influence has been spreading like a cancer through Port Charles, corrupting officials and eliminating anyone who stands in his way. Tracy's moral dilemma. Over at the Quartermain mansion, Tracy Quartermain finds herself in an increasingly uncomfortable position. During a tense conversation with Michael Corinthos, she makes it abundantly clear that someone is being unfairly kept in the dark. Tracy's exact complaint centers on the idea that keeping her uninformed isn't just wrong, it's actively unfair to the person being excluded from crucial information. The burning question is whether Tracy is specifically referring to Brooklyn Quartermain, who remains blissfully unaware of the dangerous secret Tracy is harboring. Tracy has been covering for Michael ever since she witnessed him at Drew's residence on the fateful night of the shooting. This alibi has put Tracy in a precarious position, where she's essentially lying by omission to protect Michael from whatever consequences he might face if the truth came out. However, Tracy's conscience appears to be catching up with her. As someone who values family loyalty above almost everything else, she's finding it increasingly difficult to maintain this deception, especially when it means keeping her own granddaughter Brooklyn completely in the dark about matters that could potentially impact the entire family. The weight of this secret is clearly taking its toll on Tracy, who's never been one to shy away from speaking her mind. Her frustration with Michael is palpable as she challenges him on the ethics of their arrangement. Tracy understands that every day they continue this charade, they're digging themselves deeper into a hole that could eventually swallow them all. She's witnessed enough family scandals over the years to know that secrets have a way of exploding at the worst possible moments, and she's desperately trying to prevent that from happening again. Lucas receives an unexpected proposal. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Lucas Jones finds himself on the receiving end of an intriguing proposition. Marco Rios approaches Lucas with what he describes as another way forward, suggesting an alternative path that Lucas might not have previously considered. Marco's pitch comes at a crucial time for Lucas, who's been struggling with his own personal and professional challenges. The specifics of Marco's proposal remain shrouded in mystery, but the fact that he's presenting it as a viable alternative suggests it could be something that significantly alters Lucas's current trajectory. Marco's timing is particularly interesting, as he seems to have identified a moment when Lucas is most receptive to considering new options. Whether this proposal relates to Lucas's medical career, his personal life, or something else entirely remains to be seen. However, Marco's earnest approach and the way he frames this as a legitimate way forward indicates that he believes strongly in whatever he's suggesting. Lucas will need to carefully weigh the pros and cons of this unexpected offer, considering how it might impact not only his own life, but also those around him who depend on his stability and judgment. Sidwell's ominous warning to Drew. The tension reaches a fever pitch when Jen Sidwell arranges a private meeting with Drew Kane. Behind closed doors, away from prying eyes and listening ears, Sidwell delivers a warning that's as stern as it is threatening. His exact words carry an unmistakable edge of menace. If you change this, you're on your own. The implication is crystal clear. Drew has been given explicit instructions, and any deviation from those orders will result in Sidwell withdrawing his protection and support, leaving Drew exposed and vulnerable to whatever consequences might follow. This warning reveals the precarious position Drew has found himself in. He's clearly been working with or for Sidwell in some capacity, possibly related to the bribery scandal or other criminal activities that have been unfolding in Port Charles. Sidwell's threat suggests that Drew is considering backing out or altering their arrangement in some way. And the criminal mastermind is making it abundantly clear that such a decision would be catastrophic for Drew personally. The power dynamic between them is unmistakable. Sidwell holds all the cards, and Drew is essentially trapped in a situation where following orders might compromise his integrity. But disobeying could result in his complete destruction. The private nature of this meeting underscores just how dangerous Sidwell truly is. He's not making empty threats in front of witnesses. He's delivering calculated warnings in settings where there's no evidence, no recordings, and no one to corroborate what was said. This is how career criminals operate. They leave no trails, create no evidence, and ensure that anyone who crosses them does so knowing there's no protection and no way to prove what really happened. Willow on the verge of discovery. Unknown to both Sidwell and Drew, their private conversation might not be as private as they believe. Willow Kane is positioned to stumble upon shocking information that could blow the lid off the entire conspiracy. As she prepares to attend the party where Drew and Sidwell are meeting, there's a very real possibility that she could overhear crucial details about Sidwell's bribery scheme and, even more damning, his role in ordering the assassination of Judge Eva Heron. If Willow does manage to eavesdrop on this conversation, she'd be confronted with information that could endanger her life while simultaneously giving her the power to expose a massive criminal conspiracy. The moral dilemma would be enormous. Does she go to the authorities immediately, risking Sidwell's wrath? Does she confide in Michael or Sonny? Or does she keep the information to herself while trying to figure out the safest way to proceed? Each option carries significant risks, and Willow's choice could have far-reaching consequences for everyone in Port Charles. However, there's an alternative scenario that's equally compelling. Instead of overhearing the Sidwell-Drew conversation at the party, Willow might make her shocking discovery during a visit to Alexis Davis's house. She's just arrived to drop off Scout Quartermain, and Alexis could seize this opportunity to share critical information about the anonymous letter she received. This letter contains explosive details about Michael's actual whereabouts on the night of the shooting and Tracy's subsequent cover-up to protect him. If Alexis does reveal this information to Willow, it will put her in an incredibly difficult position. As Michael's wife, Willow has a right to know what her husband was really doing that night. But the knowledge could also force her to choose between protecting her husband and standing up for the truth. The revelation of Tracy's involvement would add another layer of complexity, as Willow would realize that multiple family members have been conspiring to hide the truth from her and everyone else. Cody's pearls of wisdom? Elsewhere in Port Charles, Cody Bell finds himself in a position to offer guidance to someone in need. While the specific recipient of his wisdom remains unclear, Cody's natural instincts and street-smart perspective often provide valuable insights that others might miss. Whether he's counseling a friend through a difficult decision or offering tactical advice on how to handle a dangerous situation, Cody's words tend to carry weight because they come from genuine experience and a deep understanding of human nature. Cody has proven time and again that he's more than just muscle and charm. He possesses a keen intellect and an ability to read people and situations with remarkable accuracy. His guidance could be directed towards someone dealing with romantic troubles, professional challenges, or even criminal threats. Regardless of the specific context, whoever receives Cody's words of wisdom would be wise to listen carefully, as his advice typically comes from a place of authentic concern and practical knowledge. Sonny's calculated seduction. In what might be the most audacious subplot of the episode, Sonny Corinthos sits down with A.D.A. Justine Turner and proceeds to test the boundaries of their professional relationship. When Justine firmly states that there's never a gray area in matters of law and justice, Sonny counters with a knowing smile and the suggestion that she should never say never. His words are laced with the kind of confidence that comes from decades of successfully manipulating people and situations to serve his purposes. Sonny's approach with Justine is multifaceted. It's part flirtation, part psychological manipulation, and entirely strategic. He's attempting to blur the lines between personal attraction and professional duty, knowing that if he can get Justine to see things from his perspective, he might be able to influence legal proceedings that affect him or his organization. His use of charm and persuasion is calculated down to the smallest detail, from his body language to his choice of words, all designed to make Justine question her own rigid adherence to prosecutorial guidelines. However, Ada Turner isn't some naive newcomer who can be easily swayed by Sonny's legendary charisma. She's confident in her ability to outsmart him, to recognize his tactics for what they are, and to maintain her professional integrity despite his best efforts to compromise it. Justine believes she's seen through Sonny's game and that she's immune to his manipulations. But the real question is whether her confidence is justified or if she's underestimating just how skilled Sonny is at getting what he wants. The cat-and-mouse game between Sonny and Justine represents a classic battle of wills. Sonny has spent his entire adult life operating in gray areas, understanding that the world isn't black and white, and knowing how to exploit the ambiguities that exist in every situation. Justine, on the other hand, has built her career on upholding clear legal standards and refusing to compromise on matters of right and wrong. Their philosophical clash makes their interactions particularly charged, as each believes they can outmaneuver the other. The outcome of this power struggle could have significant implications for multiple ongoing storylines. If Sonny succeeds in swaying Justine even slightly, it could affect prosecutions related to Sidwell's criminal activities, Drew's legal troubles, or other cases that touch on Sonny's interests. Conversely, if Justine remains steadfast and perhaps even uses Sonny's attempts at manipulation against him, it could lead to serious legal consequences for the mob boss and those connected to him. As Tuesday's episode unfolds, these interconnected storylines will create a tapestry of tension, revelation, and consequence that promises to keep viewers on the edge of their seats. From Jordan's crucial discovery to Sidwell's menacing warning, from Tracy's ethical struggles to Willow's impending shock, every character is positioned at a critical juncture where their next decision could alter the course of their lives and the lives of those around them. The stakes have never been higher, and the potential for explosive revelations has never been greater in Port Charles. Next, we will learn about the issue of how Jen Sidwell's sinister manipulation tactics are reaching new and terrifying heights. With young ace Cassadine emerging as the most vulnerable piece in this deadly chess game that threatens to destroy everything Mayor Laura Collins has worked so hard to protect. The blackmail web tightens around Port Charles. The current landscape in Port Charles has become increasingly treacherous for Mayor Laura Collins, who finds herself caught in a web of blackmail orchestrated by the cunning and ruthless Jen Sidwell. This international criminal has proven himself to be far more dangerous and calculating than anyone initially anticipated when he first arrived in town. His methods are sophisticated, his threats are credible, and his willingness to exploit any vulnerability makes him one of the most formidable adversaries Laura has ever faced in her decades-long history of battling villains. What makes Sidwell particularly dangerous is his meticulous approach to gathering leverage. The photographs he possesses of Laura with the deceased Professor Henry Hank Dalton represent just the tip of the iceberg in his comprehensive arsenal of blackmail material. These images, taken at what was undoubtedly a crime scene, show Laura in a position that would be impossible to explain away to law enforcement or the public. The optics alone would be devastating to her political career. But more importantly, they could lead to serious criminal charges that would see the beloved mayor behind bars. But Sidwell's photographic evidence doesn't stop with Laura. In a move that demonstrates his thorough surveillance capabilities, he also managed to capture damning images of Sonny Corinthos engaged in the disposal of what can only be assumed to be Professor Dalton's remains. This dual-pronged blackmail strategy is particularly insidious because it creates a situation where Laura cannot seek help from authorities without simultaneously implicating one of Port Charles' most prominent citizens in a felony. The mob boss may have experience navigating legal troubles, but being caught on camera disposing of a body would present challenges even for someone with Sonny's resources and connections. Laura's impossible position. The mayor finds herself in an unprecedented predicament that tests every moral fiber of her being. Laura Collins has built her entire political career and personal reputation on principles of transparency, justice, and serving the greater good of Port Charles. Now she's being forced to operate in the shadows, making decisions that go against everything she stands for. The internal conflict she's experiencing must be absolutely agonizing. As each day she maintains this secret, she betrays the trust of the citizens who elected her to lead them with integrity. What compounds Laura's distress is the knowledge that going to the police would mean betraying Sonny, someone who has been both friend and occasional adversary over the years. Despite their complicated history and the many times their paths have crossed in conflict, there remains a mutual respect between them. Laura understands that Sonny's world operates by different rules, and while she doesn't condone his lifestyle choices, she recognizes that he was attempting to help her when he became involved in this situation. The thought of repaying his assistance by delivering him to law enforcement weighs heavily on her conscience. Furthermore, Laura knows that Sonny, as a seasoned mob boss, entered this situation with full awareness of the potential consequences. He's no stranger to the risks associated with evidence disposal and criminal cover-ups. If she were to confess everything to the Port Charles Police Department, Sonny would likely understand her position and wouldn't hold it against her personally. He might even encourage her to do what's necessary to protect herself and her family. However, understanding and forgiveness don't change the fact that such a confession would devastate Sonny's life and potentially tear apart his family, leaving his children without their father and his organization without its leader. The breaking point approaches. As Sidwell continues to escalate his demands, there's a growing likelihood that Laura will reach her absolute breaking point. Every blackmail situation has its limits, and Laura Collins is not someone who can be pushed indefinitely without eventually standing her ground. If Sidwell makes the catastrophic miscalculation of demanding that Laura take actions that could directly result in physical harm or the death of an innocent person, he will discover just how fierce the mayor can become when her moral boundaries are crossed. In such a scenario, Laura may find herself forced to make the agonizing decision to reject Sidwell's commands entirely, regardless of the personal consequences. She might stand before him with steel in her voice and determination in her eyes, declaring that she's finished participating in his twisted games. In this imagined confrontation, Laura could tell Sidwell that she's prepared to march straight to Police Commissioner Jordan Ashford and lay out the entire sordid story, from beginning to end. She might even invite him to send those incriminating photographs to the PCPD if he dares, calling his bluff in a high-stakes gamble that could either free her from his control or destroy everything she holds dear. However, Sidwell didn't acquire his power and influence by backing down when challenged. This international criminal has invested significant time and resources into positioning Laura as his puppet within Port Charles' political infrastructure. Her role as mayor provides him with unprecedented access to information, resources, and potential cover for his operations. The value of having a high-ranking city official under his control cannot be overstated, and Sidwell will undoubtedly fight with everything at his disposal to maintain that advantage. He's not the type of villain to simply accept defeat and walk away when his leverage is threatened. Kevin Collins in the crosshairs? Sidwell has already demonstrated his willingness to threaten Laura's loved ones by making ominous remarks about Kevin Collins, her husband and the town's respected psychiatrist. These threats against Kevin sent shockwaves through Laura's entire being, awakening a primal protective instinct that every spec possesses. The thought of harm coming to Kevin because of her involvement in this nightmare scenario is almost unbearable for Laura to contemplate. Kevin represents stability, love, and partnership in her life. And the idea that Sidwell could reach out and hurt him at any moment adds another layer of psychological torture to the blackmail situation. The threats against Kevin serve multiple purposes in Sidwell's strategy. First, they demonstrate his reach and capability to strike at Laura's most intimate relationships. Second, they create a constant state of anxiety and fear that keeps Laura off balance and compliant. Third, they establish a pattern that suggests even more devastating moves could be coming. If Sidwell is willing to threaten a grown man with substantial resources and connections like Kevin Collins, what might he be willing to do to more vulnerable targets in Laura's life? Is Cassadine the ultimate leverage? This brings us to the most heart-wrenching possibility in this entire dangerous situation. Young is Cassadine becoming Sidwell's next target? The innocent toddler, with his cherubic face and complete vulnerability, represents Laura's absolute weak point. As his great-grandmother, Laura has already developed a deep bond with little Ace. And the maternal instincts that she's honed over decades of raising her own children and protecting her grandchildren are now focused on this newest addition to the family. When Sidwell first laid out his blackmail scheme, there was a moment that eagle-eyed viewers might recall with new significance. As Ace's cries came through the baby monitor, Sidwell deliberately picked up the device, holding it in his hands while making pointed comments about how everyone has their price. At the time, this might have seemed like a casual gesture, but looking back with the benefit of hindsight, it appears to have been a calculated message. Sidwell was subtly indicating that he'd already identified Laura's true pressure point, the one vulnerability that could override all her other considerations and keep her firmly under his control. The symbolism of that baby monitor moment was profound. Sidwell wasn't just acknowledging Ace's presence in the house. He was establishing that the child was within his awareness and potentially within his reach. For Laura, watching this international criminal handle something so intimately connected to her great-grandson must have sent chills down her spine. It was a preview of the nightmare that might be coming. A hint that Sidwell had studied her psychology carefully enough to understand that threatening Ace would be the most effective tool in his arsenal. Production hints and narrative foreshadowing. The recent recasting of the role of Ace Cassadine and the increased frequency of his appearances in episodes are likely not coincidental developments. General Hospital's production team has a long history of making strategic casting and scheduling decisions that set up future storylines. When a child character who previously appeared sporadically suddenly begins showing up more regularly, it's often a signal that this character is about to become central to an important plot development. The decision to recast with a slightly older child actor could indicate plans for Ace to have more significant on-screen presence during what might be a traumatic storyline. If the writers are indeed planning for Ace to become caught up in Sidwell's schemes, whether through a kidnapping plot or some other form of danger, they would need an actor who can handle more screen time and potentially more complex scenes. The current trajectory suggests that viewers should prepare themselves emotionally for seeing this innocent child placed in jeopardy as Sidwell tightens his grip on Laura. Laura's impossible choice. The dilemma that Laura faces regarding Ace is fundamentally different from the one involving Sonny or even Kevin. With Sonny, she's weighing the fate of a grown man who knowingly entered into a criminal situation. With Kevin, she's concerned about her husband, but he's an adult with his own agency and ability to protect himself to some degree. With Ace, however, she's looking at a completely defenseless child who has no understanding of the dangers surrounding him and no ability to protect himself from threats. If Sidwell moves forward with targeting Ace, Laura will be forced to ask herself an unbearable question. Can she really prioritize her own freedom, her own legal safety, or even Sonny's protection over the life and safety of an innocent toddler? The answer, for anyone who knows Laura Collins, is absolutely not. She would sacrifice everything, including her position as mayor, her reputation, her freedom, and possibly even her own life, before she would allow harm to come to that child. This creates the perfect trap for Laura, and Sidwell undoubtedly knows it. By making Ace the focal point of his threats, he ensures that Laura will comply with virtually any demand, no matter how outrageous or dangerous. She might be willing to risk prison time for herself, but she cannot risk whatever horrific fate Sidwell might have planned for Ace if she refuses to cooperate. This psychological leverage is far more powerful than any photograph or piece of evidence could ever be. The kidnapping scenario. The most likely scenario that's being set up involves some form of kidnapping plot targeting Ace. Sidwell's organization has demonstrated the capability to operate sophisticated criminal enterprises, and abducting a child from a prominent Port Charles family would send the exact message he wants to send. The kidnapping could unfold in various ways, from a bold daytime snatch to a more subtle disappearance that initially appears accidental. But the end result would be the same: Ace in Sidwell's control and Laura completely at his mercy. In such a scenario, Laura would be presented with impossible choices at every turn. Does she involve law enforcement, risking Ace's safety if Sidwell follows through on threats to harm the child if police are notified? Does she attempt a rescue operation with the help of Sonny's organization, potentially escalating the violence and putting even more people at risk? Does she simply comply with whatever demands Sidwell makes, hoping that eventually he'll release Ace unharmed? Each option comes with devastating potential consequences. The tightening grip. As this storyline continues to develop, General Hospital spoilers indicate that Sidwell will only become more brazen and demanding in his manipulation of Laura. The grip he has on Port Charles Mayor will tighten like a vice, creating increasingly disturbing moments that will test Laura's resolve and force her to make choices that will haunt her regardless of which path she selects. The days ahead promise to be filled with tension, moral complexity, and heart-wrenching drama as one of the show's most beloved characters faces her darkest hour yet.